Tiktuk Masoret HaMikra. This section will deal with a special topic, the Dagesh, and I'm going to split it into two, the Dagesh Kal, the two types, Dagesh Kal, Dagesh Hazak. The first one will deal with Dagesh Kal. It's called a soft Dagesh, but it's hard to distinguish, but it may be a little softer than the Dagesh Hazak. First of all, introduction about where you find the Dagesh and which type. On letters He, Aleph, Het, Resh, Ein, Ha'achreya, He, Aleph, Resh, Het, Ein. Usually, throughout the Tanakh, you don't find a Dagesh at all. Not of either type, Dagesh Kal, Dagesh Hazak. Once in a while, there are some exceptions, according to the Masoret. Once in a while, you find a Dagesh, for example, in a Resh here or there, but very, very unusual, very few of those. The Dagesh Kal is only found in the letters Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Kaf, Pe, Tav, Beged, Kefet. Only in those 6 letters. And then the Dagesh Hazak can be found in also the Beged, Kefet letters, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Kaf, Pe, Tav, and also all the other letters, which are Tet, Samech, Tas, Shin, Kof, Tzadi, Shakatz, and Nozelim. Nun, Vav, Zayin, Lamed, Yod, Mem. Those can receive only Dagesh Hazak. Those last, well, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The last 5 and 6, 11 letters. Ha'achreya, usually not at all. And then Beged Kefet, those 6, you can find a Dagesh Kal, Dagesh Hazak. So what's the Dagesh? What are the rules for Dagesh Kal when you find a Dagesh? There's 2 situations in Beged Kefet, the Otiyot Beged Kefet, where you can find a Dagesh Kal. One, in other words, which is considered something not as strong as the other one. First of all, in the beginning of a word, when any of those letters appear in the beginning of a word, like Bereshit, you have a Dagesh in the Bet, or the word Ki, Peru Urvu, in the word Ki, there's a Dagesh. In the word Peru, the Pe is the first letter. It has a Dagesh. So any words that have those letters, Beged Kef, in the beginning of a word, will receive a Dagesh Kal. The only other situation where you can have a Dagesh Kal is in the middle of a word, after Shivanah. In the middle or the end of a word, after Shivanah. For example, Ve'yirdu b'gat hayam. I'm mentioning the ones right in the beginning of Bereshit. Ve'yirdu b'gat hayam. The daled in the middle of that word after the sheva under the resh, shivanah, ve'yirdu. You don't hear the sheva, ve'yirdu shivanah. There's a dagesh in the daled. That's shivanah. And then vayishbot bayom hashivri. There's a dagesh in the bet because it follows a shivanah under the shin. Vayish bot, you don't hear the sheva under the shin. So the dagesh in the bet is considered also a Dagesh Kal, and it's in those letters Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Kaf, Pe, Tet, Kaf, Pe, Tav, Kaf, Pe, Tav. In the beginning of a word with those letters, and also in the middle of a word with those letters, middle or the end of a word with those letters, if you are following a Shivanah. Now, for example, also at the end of the word you have Vayishp Mimenu Shevi, after the Shivanah, under the shin, Vayishp, there's a bet, there's a Dagesh in the bet itself. Now, one other thing I want to tell you, there are cases where this particular rule of having a Dagesh Kal with the Otiyot Beged Kefet, Bet Gimel Dalet Kaf Pe Tav, where that rule all of a sudden is overridden by another rule. It's called the Kelal of Evi. When you have in a previous word which ends with Aleph, or the letters Aleph or He or Vav or Yod, Evi, any of those letters, and following you have the next word starting with Beged Kefet, the Dagesh and the Dagesh Kal normally in that Bet or Kaf or whatever it is, that is dropped. So you have what's called a Rafeh. In other words, that letter is a soft letter. So instead of B, it becomes V. And instead of K, it becomes Ch. Same thing. And the word that any of those letters which normally have a dagesh in the beginning of the word, when it's found at the beginning of the word, if the previous word ends with an ot, a letter, aleph, he, vav, yod, it's batel. The kalal of Evi overrides the kalal of Beged Kefet. Now, here's a Yotzeh min HaKlal and a Yotzeh min HaKlal. When you have, here's the ta'amim come into play. The case of Evi applying, in other words, being relevant to the fact that in the next word you have a letter, Beged Kefet, which doesn't have a dagesh because of Evi, that applies when you have the two words together with a what's called a ta'am mesharet in the first one. So in other words, it's not a major ta'am, it's a minor ta'am, and it brings the two words together, mesharet to the next word. So in for example, and so then when you have that case, okay, the dagesh kal in Beged Kefet is dropped. But when you have a ta'am mafsik, a ta'am, an important ta'am that stops or causes a pause between the first word and the second word, and the first word ends with aleph, he, vav, yod, the second word starts with beg, or bet, gimel, dalet, kaf, bet, and one of those letters, but you have a ta'am mafsik, a type of ta'am that causes one to pause, then the klal of Evi is batel. That rule where normally you'd say, okay, the letter Beged Kefet after the Evi in the previous word would mean that there's no dagesh. No, now there is a dagesh because the ta'am mafsik separates those two words. So it's as if the first word didn't exist there. So you're starting all over with the second word by itself. When you have a ta'am mesharet where the two words kind of go together, then you do have the ta'am, the rule of Evi applies, and the first word signifies the continuation to the second word, so you have there's no dagesh in the Beged Kefet. And interesting, I'll give you a case in in the reading of Rosh Chodesh in Parashat Pinchas. You have the word temimim, taf mem mem yud mem, so it's a letter Beged Kefet, but in one case, the temimim, the tav, has no dagesh. In the other two cases, written three times in the reading for Rosh Chodesh in Parashat Pinchas, in other two cases, there is a dagesh in the tav. And yet, the word before has it's one of the letters, b'nei shana temimim. It's a he. In each case, before the word temimim, shana ends with a he, and then you have temimim. In one case, there's no dagesh. In two other cases, there is a dagesh. Why? Because of this business with the ta'amim, with the nigun. That the first one is b'nei shana temimim. You have a dargat tevir. When you have a dargat tevir, the daga is a ta'am mesharet. It is a ta'am that services the next word. The two words are together. So I read it together. B'nei shana temimim. So therefore, the rule of Evi applies, because the two words are almost connected, and it's that they're very close to one another, set together. So therefore, when you have the hey at the end of the word shana, and you have temimim with the next word, there's no dagesh in that. That is b'nei shana temimim. But the other two b'nei shana temimim in that particular reading has a tarha. One is they're both at the end of I think it's one is in the middle of the sentence, one is the end of the sentence, but they're read b'nei shana temimim, b'nei shana temimim. After shana you have a tarha, and when you have a tarha is called a ta'am mafsik. It is a ta'am which separates the two words. So between shana and temimim there's a pause. Here, listen to the way I said it. B'nei shana temimim. Temimim is on its own. And when it's on its own, the rule of Evi doesn't apply. It's batel. So therefore, you have a dagesh in those other two cases in that particular reading for the word temimim. The first one, darga tevir, the two words are read together. B'nei shana temimim. The rule of Evi applies because the darga is ta'am, what's called ta'am mesharet. It services the next word. The two of them are read together. So therefore, there's no dagesh in the tav. The others, b'nei shana temimim, u'b'nei shana temimim adnachta, sof pasuk. In each case, that the tarha is a tam mafsik, therefore the rule of Ehri does not apply anymore. It's batel, and you go back to the rule of Beged Kefet, and you have a dagesh in the tav.